In a world with no content to watch on YouTube, one man will give you something to do right now. And that's me, Edison with Isle Collectibles. And yeah, you see these little bad boys? That's a P.S.A. return. Yeah, okay. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's hurry along. Let's scurry along. I like opening the... Remember, cards falling on the ground, that's just part of the process. All the professionals do that. You know, TCA Gaming, Rusty's probably dropped his fair share of slabs in the past. So yeah, let's just keep going. Okay, starting off with, I think this is a lot of Japanese Nuback. Ooh, there is hair. I think this dust is from this slab falling on the floor. It's just a sick card. Friends in Sinnoh, kind of like a play. There's friends in Galar, friends in Hisui. I just know it's a Hisuian, so I don't know how to say the region itself. And then, you know, Lola Friends, kind of like in that same vein. Just a set card, but it's really good artwork, man. You have Cynthia, you have Barry, Dawn. I actually don't know the trainer's character name for this generation. Well, that's a bad look. And Volkner at the top. But just really, this to me was my favorite of the V-Star Universe cards. Next up is this Golem Hollow. Really cool artwork. Just Golem, you know, I don't know. It's just a Golem artwork, man. Golem's looking pretty bossed up. He got the hands on the hips, sizing you up. Pretty cool early, relatively early. This card is like 20 years old now to pull the 10. This is not a good card. Shift Tree from Undone Seal. I do like the artwork, but a 6 is pretty bad. I gotta figure out if... Oh yeah, what the hell? Why the hell did I submit this? It's literally dented right there. Okay. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Jesus. Okay, so we follow up the 6 with the 10. So maybe they, you know, this is a theory. Yeah, the 6 came before, right? When they're going through the pile. So they see this card, they're like, oh my god, it has a fat dent on it, has edgeware, 6. They see this one, they're like, oh, it doesn't have a dent, it's a 10. Maybe that's why I sent it in, because I wanted to guarantee a 10. More of these Machamp Vs. I have quite a few of these. The Machamp V alt art from Time Gaze are just cool artwork. But yeah, this is like a card that you've probably seen. I don't know if I've unboxed this in past subs, but you've definitely seen it if you've been to my store or on my eBay. And you always see these pop up for sale on eBay. They're just like a really easy card to grade. Stormfront Dialga, I always like this one and the Giratina from like the Stormfront collection because of the colored background. Dark Phantasma Gengar, I've talked about this in the past, just really good card to grade. Very easy to grade as well for the most part. You can very easily pick up like 10 worthy raw copies, but the artwork is just awesome, and Gengar is popular enough that there is always demand for him in PSA 10. Chansey's EX, we're going to see this throughout, but this might be the first one. I cracked a lot of my CGC slabs. This submission specifically has a lot of cracked CGC slabs. So I think this went from a CGC 8.5 to a PSA 9. So I have a spreadsheet too. I might just link it at the end of the video if people want to view it. But yeah, I was trying to hope for like my 8.5s to cross up to 9 or 10. This Delcatty was also a CGC copy. It was a CGC 8, and there's a pretty decent amount of edgeware throughout, so it stayed the PSA 8. But like another thing I was thinking about was that maybe there is a chance that if a card goes from CGC 9 to PSA 8, CGC 9 to PSA 9, or if it just stays the same grade in general, it could be the case that the card is just easier to sell in PSA, that it was worth crossing anyway. This is another cross grade card. This was a CGC 8.5 that I've had listed for a really long time, and I mean that's a pretty substantial bump in terms of value from the CGC 8.5 to a PSA 10. Okay, wait, is this the other one? Oh, just Scarlet and Violet. We're going to see a bunch of these in this sub, so I'll just go over it quickly. Love this pre-order promo. Really good artwork, good seller. I had 2 of this Spiral Force Deoxys, which is an awesome full art with the, you know, Team Plasma logo. This one pulled a 10. So the 2 copies I sent in were both CGC 8s that I cracked. And to me, the CGC 8 was just, the grade didn't make sense. The card looked really good. I didn't see scratches on the front. I didn't see scratches or on the back, no real edgeware. And evidently it worked out because one of them went from a CGC 8 to a PSA 10. That is It's a pretty important grade bump in terms of value. More of this Pikachu, just probably a bunch stacked. I had a couple of these raw. I was originally buying them and sending them to CGC, but they're coming back CGC 995. So the last couples that I had raw, I decided to sit on them until P.S.A. opened up, and I'm really happy it did. I did that because getting it in the P.S.A. 10 is sick. Just a really good beads art. And I think I mentioned in the past with this artist that the first card that they did, they are not like an established Pokemon card artist. They won the I think it was 2019 or 2020 illustration contest with their Gardevoir artwork. And then, so what happens is you submit the illustration, whoever wins that artwork gets printed into a card. So they won that competition, and since then they've been hired by Pokemon Company on a pretty regular basis to do cards for the new set. So that's like a really awesome kind of transition from hobby artist or like semi-professional to working for the Pokemon Company, which is, well, Creatures Inc., I should say. Okay, just a couple of those in 10. Okay, 3 in 10. I'll probably all sequential as well. Yeah, 3 sequential 10s for that card. Just great art. Okay, 4 sequentials 10 for that card. Dark Phantasma Gengar, and another one, but this one pulled the 9. Let's move this stuff, and I'll crack open another box. For Alligator, P.S.A. 7. So this was actually a CGC 8.5 I cracked, and you might say, wow, you're kind of an idiot. You should have just kept it as an 8.5, and I would agree with you. The issue I noticed was you can see on his front, right on his chin, you see those white dots? That is just scratching on the hollow foil of the card to the point where the back layer, like the white behind the print is kind of being shown. I noticed that after I cracked it out, I noticed this immediately, and I looked at my CGC scans that I had up on the website, and the card was damaged. Like the card had this flaw on it already. So to me personally, I think CGC misgraded it. Like a card with this type of damage on the front should not be grading at 8.5 near mint. Next up, we have this Meganium from Dragon Frontiers, another CGC copy. I don't know what grade it was, but there is pretty bad edge wear. But if you are ever looking into the Dragon Frontiers cards, or a lot of these Delta Species hollows, you will find out very quick that this set has this era has some of the worst centering ever. So I think the edge wear, like even with this edge wear, I think it could have pulled a 8 or a 9. But yeah, that centering, literally no way. That centering is just going to get it destroyed at P.S.A. Wow, these are all cards that downgraded. The past 2 downgraded and this downgraded. This was a CGC 8 copy of this card. I didn't see what was wrong with it. It had like I think a 7 or 8 on surface, so I thought I'd try regrading it. Yeah, these suck to get the downgrades. But upgrades, this went from, I think, a CGC 8.5 to a P.S.A. 9. So that's pretty cool. We'll definitely take these are the cards that I was really hoping for to get the upgrades in. Shaman, this is another card that I cracked. Edgeware bottom right, bottom left. I thought I damaged this card, honestly. This was a CGC 8.5 that I thought had a chance to... I think what the problem that I had with a lot of the cards in the sub was I was just looking at the CGC grade, and I mentioned this in the previous P.S.A. return that I did, that I looked at the CGC grades, and I just thought to myself, okay, CGC 8.5 should be P.S.A. 10, so I cracked them. And I didn't really look at the actual quality of the cards in the slabs. That for Alligator shouldn't have been cracked because it was already damaged and was graded at a higher grade as is. This Shaman was probably at an 8.5 quality, and I ran the die with P.S.A., came back to 8. That's still fine. I think the P.S.A. 8 would still be easier to sell than the CGC 8.5, honestly. So this is still fine. Leafeon Dawn Dash and an 8. Just send a couple of those. This is a really sick one. This Drapion artwork from Clash at the Summit. I mean, Drapion isn't like a really popular Pokemon, but these Legend era cards are getting harder and harder to find mint raw. And that is like one of the really cool stylistic arts that they did with the clouds. This also upgraded. This was a CGC 8.5. We crossed it over to a P.S.A. 9, which 100%, I'm 100% confident in that the P.S.A. 9 will be the easier and probably better card to sell or even collect. This was another one. This was an 8.5 CGC that crossed over to a P.S.A. 9. This is kind of what I was hoping for, like those small incremental, like half-point grades at a minimum. And this was a huge jump. This was a CGC 8.5 Sabrina's Suggestion. and it crosses over to a PSA 10. And like this card, PSA 10 is well over $200, and I think I had the 8.5 Sabrina listed for maybe 60 or so, 60 or 70. So yeah, this is awesome. Like this just feels better for a value standpoint for me as a seller, and even as someone who collects the cards, I would maybe look into cracking some of your 8.5s if they look nice. But again, as I mentioned, you have to look at the card. This, for example, I think was a CGC 9 that crossed to a PSA 9, as is. But again, this is a card that's probably easier to sell in a PSA 9. This was a CGC 9.5, crossed over to a PSA 10. Oh, and this was that one English card. So this Mew V, a friend of mine, Chalk, who runs this page, Trade Natural, I really recommend you follow him on Instagram. Some of like literally the best insight to weekly auctions you'll ever see. He does weekly PWCC recaps. If you want to know what's selling right now or what's doing bad, or really just keep up to date in a streamlined fashion, I would follow him. He had actually gifted a couple of people, a couple of his friends, like these the Charizard Ultra Premium collections, and I opened it up, and this was one of the cards I pulled. And this is an awesome card to me because I played the Pokemon TCG pretty frequently now, and one of the main decks that I've enjoyed the most, and I took to Baltimore Regionals, was Mew VMAX. And I originally was going to play this copy of the card in my deck, but I thought it looked really clean. It was super clean copy, and I kind of wanted to preserve it as is, so I decided to grade it, and it came back a 10, which is super awesome. But sorry for the long story, but it's just to show like where the card comes from and why I appreciate it. So yeah, this is just a PC card that I think the artwork is sick and I'll just keep forever. PCL, Pokemon Center Laboratory. Honestly, I can't believe this got an 8. I got 2 copies of this same seller. Graded, they were both worse condition than I realized when they came in. I graded one with CGC, got a 6.5. This one was probably equal quality and it came back an 8. And like, I'm just confused because look at all that chipping. Top left. You know, the other corners aren't nearly as bad. And then the back, that bottom right. I am surprised that it comes back that, but that is obviously good for me as someone who wants to sell this type of card. The 6.5 is a lot harder to sell than a PSA 8. And this is another great great success. This was a CGC 8.5. I sold a friend of mine, Lance, a CGC 9 that crossed. And this card to me was always this really sick artwork, and it's gotten so stupidly expensive raw in Japan. So I thought it would be time to just crack most of my CGC full arts, and it works out. It went from an 8.5 to a 10, which is insane. This didn't work out. This, I have no clue. This was a CGC 9. I actually don't understand how this got a PSA 6. I genuinely think I might just have to crack this and resubmit. I will have to, at the end of the day, I will inspect all of the cards that I think might be misgraded. But yeah, I just can't understand how that went from CGC 9 to PSA 6. This went from 9 to 9, same grade. A cool set to have. I might just end up keeping these at this point. They might be my last. And this is that other Deoxys I was talking about. So this one went from a CGC 8 to a PSA 8. So stayed the same grade. Again, might just be better to sell and move that grade. I think this might have been a CGC 9.5 that went down to a 9. I was kind of hoping that these would be easy 10s, but evidently not. And this was like, I think like an 8.85 that went down to a 7. So those do suck. But like obviously some of them aren't great. A lot of these cards downgraded quite a bit. But the upgrades are pretty consistent. The 8.5s pretty consistently went to 9s for the hollows. And some of the pretty much all the full arts I graded, I think, went at least, like went from an 8.5 to a 9 or a 10. You can see right there, Arcanine, Heart Gold Collection, one of my favorite Naoki Victory Medals. Again, this probably might have even more. These were all cracked from CGC cases. I think this was a CGC 8 that just stayed same grade at PSA. This was a CGC 8.5, I believe. And you can just look at it, left to right centering. It's like kind of shifted, so it gets smaller, bottom right corner. But this is like an example that, just from my perspective, the PSA 9 will be so much easier to put a value on and sell than a CGC half grade. This is awesome. This was probably also cracked. I don't remember the exact grade because I had a couple of these. But I know none of them were 10. So to get this in the 10 is awesome. That's a sick card. A Himeno art. Here's one of those Arcanines. So I think I cracked 4 or 5 Arcanines altogether. I can't remember the exact amount. It might have been 3 CGC 9.5s and like 1 CGC 9. So I'm guessing this is one of the 9.5s that crossed over to a 10. Oh, this is pretty sick. This Deoxys is from Holland Phantoms, and they were CGC 8s, I believe. So the CGC 8 went up to a P.S.A. 9. Another one of those Arcanines crossed over to a 10. Another one of those Friends in the Sinnoh. So, oh, yeah, I mean, this is, just so you have a perspective, I know I've mentioned it a couple times now if you've watched the other videos. These cards are really unorganized. Like, they're really mixed up. Like, all of these cards are submitted in the same stack. I just put quantity 5, and I'll throw 5 in. But they're all coming back in completely different boxes. This is a sick one. Rayquaza, see, Cynthia's Rayquaza. Really good Kawaii artwork. I've praised him a lot. This is probably my favorite TCG artist. This guy is so awesome. But, what was I going to say? This was a CGC 9.5 that crossed over to a P.S.A. 10. So that is a lot easier. And this, again, this is that Giratina Stormfront I was talking about. We had the Dialga earlier. This was a CGC 9.5 that I crossed over. Actually, I'm trying to think. I think I had sold this card raw for like 60 bucks in 9.5. And then the guy returned it to me because I sold it as the first edition. I sent him the unlimited version, which this is. It got returned. And I'm pretty happy it got returned because I think the cheapest PSA 10 copy of this card is 200 bucks. So it's a good thing we crossed it. And this is another cross. This was a CGC 8.5. I'm pretty confident to say that it was 8.5, and it went over to a 9. A 9 in PSA is a much better grade. And just so you know, too, this was a CGC 8.5 old label. So, like, a lot has changed with the company between the labels, the cases. Old labels are considered a lot of have to have a much stricter grading standard. So a lot of 8.5s or 9s might cross the PSA 10. And I was really hoping that this would get that 10, but whatever. This is still a pretty good upgrade. This was a side grade, same exact grade of both companies. So this is Suicune Entei Legend piece. This is a top half. I think I have the bottom half in one of these boxes next to me in a 10 as well. I think this copy, I'm actually not sure. I crossed 3 CGC 9.5 Legend pieces. This might be one of the 9.5s I crossed. I won't know off the top of my head. I need to get everything unboxed to tell. Armaldo, this, I believe, was just a side grade from PSA, CGC to PSA. Oh, Radiant Charizard, Cookie Saido Charizard. Shiny Charizard you can't go wrong with. Radiant. It's just good art. Like, this is having a couple of cheaper kind of filler tier Charizards, I think, is always pretty good. I think it will stand the test of time as probably the most popular card. That will always do pretty decent. You will evidently compete with a lot of people, but it's still fine. One of those Arcanines seems to have crossed down from a 9.5 to a 9. And we'll quickly go through these. Pokemon Charizard. I think this is the last raw Pokemon I have. But I think I did really good. A majority of them ended up getting 10s. Another one of these Radiants in a 10. And the last 2, Friends in Sinnoh, just completely separate from the rest. And another one of those Arcanines down in a 9. Alright, that's it for this first video. This was like 3 of those small boxes from PSA. Pretty good stuff. The cross grades, some of them, obviously, I kind of shit the bed on. But for the most part, I think crossing a lot of these cards was worth it. I guess the sales will kind of tell if it was worth it long term, but it was an experiment I wanted to try, cracking some of the nicer CGC cards that I had, roll the die a bit. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you see any cards that you're interested in or would like to buy, just feel free to message me on social media or even on YouTube. And if you have any questions about this stuff, feel free to let me know. Have a nice one. Bye.